You know, I've been largely unemployed for the last almost 2 years, and it's just got me thinking about a lot of things with what's coming in the future. What kind of really inspired me to make this video is, I guess, Portugal and Spain are experiencing like insane electricity blackouts. I'm probably going to title this video "The Coming Isolationist Future" or something like that. I don't know. I'll come up with a title. Originally, I was thinking about calling it like you should be worried about your future, which we should as well. But at the same time, I've been thinking about this. Like I said, I've been like out of the workforce, you could say, right? Like corporate America. That doesn't mean I haven't like picked up gigs here and there and made some money to sustain myself, but largely my way of living from 5 years ago has gone way down, way down. So, which I'm fine with. That's one of the funny things about my life is I feel like I was always kind of geared for this anyway, just because I've never cared about money. I've never been a big career seeker. Never been like most jobs I get. I purposely try to not promote. I try to find that like sweet spot, of like the most amount of pay for the least amount of stress kind of thing. But I'm digressing. The Like I said, the point of the video is that we're entering an age now where essentially women run the workforce, and they're the ones getting most of the college degrees, and men are just kind of checking out. Um, like in mass, basically, because one of the primary motivators of men is, I don't want to say just sex, but sex with the ability to procreate, right, to start a family. When that's taken off the table, it really gives men no reason to do anything. And I've struggled with this myself. I've been single. There's a lot of guys talking about online right now like they've been single for like 10 years. I've really been single since like high school. I mean, I haven't really had like a girlfriend. So I'm very much used to this lifestyle of just kind of living in isolation. I don't really live in isolation because I've got my parents and my family, my gym friends. I have a lot of, not a lot of friends, but I have my like group of 5 or so friends, and then my family still. They're boomers, so they're getting older, but they're still around. When my parents die off, I don't know. I don't know what that's going to look like. But again, that kind of ties into this video, because yeah, when the boomers die off, a lot of the skills. This is kind of a failing of the boomers. A lot of the skills to just run society um, are going to be lost. And I watched a lot video a long time ago by Academic Agent where he was talking about how, and I kind of agree with this. If this electricity thing doesn't, if our entire electric grid doesn't go out, right? Bitcoin, there's so many things that would become irrelevant if that happened. That's like we're going into another dark ages kind of thing, which again, I don't think that'll be very bad. I'll get into that in a second because that was a theme of the video. But Academic Agent made a video talking about how YouTube right here is going to be like the savior of humanity going forward as far as keeping things going, because we'll have, when did YouTube start? Like 2005. So yeah, we already have 20 years of videos. That's the true tragedy of YouTube, is that if you had sane people running it, not like the Susan Wojcicki's and all these people. You'd have like just an absolute database of knowledge on YouTube. If people could really speak their minds, we didn't have to speak in code. We didn't have to tiptoe around topics. We didn't have to, worry about sponsorships and all this. Treat it like a business. YouTube's becoming kind of like a business model, which is what I'm kind of trying to do as well here. I'm doing the video a day thing now, and this video will probably be scheduled out for later. You'll probably see it whenever I schedule it out, but yeah, that concept is very interesting to me, that YouTube will be the savior. Because like how many times in life now, in like the modern world, you have like a question. This probably happens all the time, right? It used to be Google it. That used to be the term, but like say you need to like change a tire, right? And you don't know how to do that. A lot of people will just go to YouTube. Say you need to, I've thought about this myself, right? When I start making money again, I've got like this plan to really start saving to buy a house, and I've even thought about just buying like a really, really crappy dive house and kind of rebuilding it basically as the cash comes in. And I'll probably be using YouTube a lot for that. I don't know. I don't really. I have a lot of friends that are, or I shouldn't say friends, they're more of like acquaintances that are in real estate and flipping. I'll probably reach out to them, but I don't know. It'll depend on how much money I'll be making, obviously, but I'm going to try to like do a lot of it myself, just as like a self-improvement, kind of thing, like take it on and learn how to do all that. Because again, I think we're going to need these skills, guys. We're going to need the trades coming back in a big way as things continue to deteriorate. And I don't know, the governments are just absolutely insane. Speaking of the Portugal, Spain thing, like Europe is really still pushing this net zero thing, which is just absolutely insane. It's like the concept of like you all have electric vehicles, but there's no power grid, so you can't charge your electric vehicles. Like, this is just madness. It's madness. And again, Trump is now in America, but I don't know if, I just always feel like it's too late. And Trump isn't really doing things as drastically as he should be. Really, Bukele in El Salvador, that's what you should be doing. You should be really just tackling the issues. But Trump doesn't seem to grasp the Napoleonic moment that he is in right now. And I think a lot of this too is it's just this fear of becoming Hitler or whatever. I don't know what it is with governments. They're just so neutered. A lot of it is that women are now in positions of everything in society, right? They're basically in positions of everything but what they should be in, which is raising families. And I'm beyond caring about women getting upset by me saying that. I really don't care. Like, that's something too about being single for so long, is you just really stop caring about what women think. I mean, even attractive ones, right? I've never been like a simp or whatever. My biggest like female worship, you could say, would have been in like my late teens, early 20s. But I've long been disillusioned with the plight of women, you could say. So I'm tired of this political game we have to play, where we have to pretend like women are as capable as men in politics, which is the domain of war, as I've talked about in previous videos. You don't need women, playing this game. Like I've said before, feminism is a luxury ideology. It only can exist when good times are had. But as the meme goes, right? Great men create good times create weak men create hard times, and it goes, hard times create strong men again, and which I think that's what we're transitioning into. But we'll have to see. I don't think it's going to come from the millennial generation, my generation, because we're one of the most soy boy just cucked generations in the probably the history of this country. Like, quite literally, the millennials are, and I'm not completely blaming the millennials, because we've had our fair share of propaganda. The boomers themselves have been so propagandized, but we got propagandized too. The big one is student loans, and now everybody is done with college largely, right? Because most millennials are approaching 40. They're in their late 30s, almost 40 now. I was born in 88, so I'm kind of like square right in the middle of the millennials. So I'm getting there. I'm getting there. But yeah, the big one that I see with millennials is the student loans, because what it's done is it's created this form of indentured servitude in this society. And it was really hard. Like, I went to college, but I was able to accrue very little debt, and largely got that under control. But there's a lot of millennials that, I mean, they're in like, that's something I've thought about, is like the in past generations, the amount of money that millennials spent going into debt for houses, or sorry, for schooling, is what like previous generations, like the boomers, or even way before that, right? Like, they would have been using that same money to buy houses and start families. So that's what's been robbed of millennials in many ways, is that, and I'm not advocating like, oh, they're pure victims here, because, but if you think about it, the entire concept of student loans is, it's a very predatory, usury laden practice. Comes from the thinking of I can't say it, a certain tribe of people will say, because you can't really talk about that on YouTube. I might start backing these up on Rumble, by the way. I've been thinking about that, because I was like, as I get spicier, I might need to back these up. But I'm seeing a lot of channels, like, that's one of the reasons why I've felt comfortable starting to make these videos, because I'm seeing a lot of channels now that are just kind of coming out of the flood works, and I think Trump's vibe shift is really helping that. So I'm just gonna go full steam and keep making these videos and releasing them and see what happens. But yeah, the this usury, debt-focused society that we live in really coalesced with the millennials, because we took out a lot of debt in the wrong places. We were not able to get jobs. Like, I don't think I've met a single millennial. I've met a couple boomers, only a couple. And these are boomers that went to college like later in life, like when I was in college 10 plus years ago. These were boomers that would have been in like their 50s going at the time. And I think I now know just one boomer that I met when I was in college that actually works in the field. She got an ancestry degree, and she works for like some kind of ancestry company. So there's like one person that I know, literally one. And then millennials, I've literally never met a millennial that went to like a college that does what they went to college for. Like, I went, stupidly to get an art degree. That's very cliche. A lot of millennials did this. But it was pretty much a complete waste of time. Like, the more I think about it, I never got into drinking, thank goodness, like, bless the Lord. But I didn't really do anything either. I just did what I do now. I just like played video games. I tried to date. I remember that was when I really tried to date. But again, the further disillusionment of women continued, because women really, this is probably a topic for another video, but women in the modern world, they're really not interested. They're just not interested. That's a big problem we're having, is I think most of the men are willing to make the sacrifice of starting a family. Like, we're interested, we want children, but women are just not interested. And by the time they realize it, or if they ever get interested, it's far too late. It's one of God's cruel ironies is that women have very little time to figure this out, and if you psyop an entire generation to believe that female rights are the greatest virtue, maybe not it probably is female rights, you know, female rights and black people are the greatest virtues of society, you get modernity. And so one of God's cruel ironies is that essentially nobody has children. It's like a weird thing. It's almost like it's like a way to restructure the scales, so to speak, because just because one generation doesn't have a lot of kids, it doesn't mean that the future is lost. It just means that, you know, there's like a recalibration event that has to happen. The really good book that actually talks about this is Man and Technics by Oswald Spengler. Highly recommend anyone read that book. It kind of talks about cycles and how these things work. It's a really easy book to read too. It's only like, you could read it in an afternoon basically. There's some complex concepts, but if you're following me in this video, if you understand what I'm talking about with the cyclical nature of history and civilizations, you know, all this takes is like a cursory study of ancient Greece into ancient Rome. You know, then Rome falls, you go into Byzantine Constantinople, you know, Germany forms, you got Prussia, right? The Germanic hordes become a civilization. You've got the Vikings becoming Normans. The true irony is a lot of these civilizations were defeated by Christianity, but that's another video for another day. But yeah, we're kind of in that period, to kind of like get back to my point. Yeah, I think I'm gonna like name this video something like neo-feudalism or the coming isolation, something like that, because that's kind of the idea I'm trying to get across in this video, is that we are going to be entering, this is unavoidable now, I don't think there's any way around it, we are going to be entering an age of just really low, just lowering living standards. Doesn't mean it's going to be low, like we're going to be starving on the street tomorrow. I mean, that could happen, right? I've said in the past, the way these things kind of work is they happen slowly, and then all at once. I feel like we are almost to the all at once phase, but I think just in our time, like I said, unless the entire power grid goes out, which is why this Spain-Portugal thing is concerning. But if you look into that, I mean, they're doing a lot of the green energy. They were doing like the windmills and all that stupid garbage. So like if you run electricity the old-fashioned way, we should be fine. You know, a lot of people can even do this on their own. That's what I'm saying. We have the knowledge now, but the quality of living is going to go way down. And so like community building is going to be key. It's just going to be absolutely key. And I hope I can garner a decent audience here with these videos over time, because that's another one of my goals. I kind of want to start getting people in this mindset of, you're not going to be able to rely on your 401k. You're not going to be able to rely on the traditional methods of the boomers. Something to consider about the boomers as well is they really were born in like the perfect time for this mass amount of just individualistic hedonism, we could call it, right? They were born like right after World War II, you know, 1947 and on. It was like the big boom of Hollywood. If you guys have ever played the video game LA Noire, it's a completely fictional game as far as the story goes, but there's a lot of cool stuff in that game. But it shows you a 1940s Los Angeles and just all the hope and promise. But a lot of the game is also about, you know, what Hollywood actually was, right? Hollywood was it was basically a way to subvert society, but at the same time it was attracting all these women that wanted to find stardom, right? And then they would, you know the joke, they would go and get on the casting couch and get horribly traumatized. And like, this is how you create feminists, by the way. This is how a feminist becomes a feminist. And so the boomers were born at that like pivotal time where like a lot of this was starting. And you know, the government was experimenting on the boomers. You had things like MK Ultra in Vietnam. I've talked about Propaganda by Edward Bernays, Public Opinion by Walter Lippmann. If you've seen the show Mad Men, like, they were rolling these things out of marketing. Marketing was becoming a really, really big thing of like, just how do you just sell this? And you know, the millennials, we got completely destroyed by this as well with things like Facebook. And but the boomers were born in this ideal time where like it was beginning, but it was not quite societally devastating yet like it is now. So they were able to live their lives and party in their youth. And you know, I won't go into this. I've talked about this but party in their youth, and you know, then become, you know, yuppies in their older years, like not older years, but like when they became adults in like the 80s and 90s, they were able to take the off ramp. I like to say they were able to, okay, I'm gonna go like be responsible now. And you know, millennials, we still probably will do this, but it's just taking us a lot longer because we've been in this weird limbo. And you know, the COVID pandemic didn't help at all. It just completely screwed us pretty bad. Like that was a really, I don't know, that's it's neither here nor there. I've talked about that ad nauseum, but yeah, we're at 20 minutes, by the way. You guys have still been watching. I really appreciate watching, listening to my thoughts. Go ahead and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. It helps the channel, and like the videos. But yeah, to kind of wrap it up here, that's really what I'm trying to get across, is that we're going to be entering some pretty difficult times within the next 20 years, right? I do say take everything by 5-year cycles now, instead of the whole plan for retirement or whatever. Nobody's going to retire, and there is no planning for retirement. But you take things by 5-year cycles, because maybe even 4-year cycles. I might revise that, because every political cycle now, Trump has been flirting. He keeps talking about it with this idea of running again in 2028. You know, he could, if you just study Russia like Putin did this, it's not even that crazy, especially when you look at the country now where the Constitution is, nobody follows the Constitution anymore. So I'm sick of these arguments. The Charlie Kirks of the world, to me, they're irrelevant. I don't want to even hear these arguments. We need to be living in reality. Reality is that we are about to enter hard times, and we need to be able to weather this storm with competent leadership as possible. And so until another great man steps up, as far as I'm concerned, Trump is the guy for this. You know, he's not even ideal in general, because he's basically a 90s Democrat in a lot of his thinking, and he's also a boomer. That'll be probably the one benefit of losing the boomers, will be that it's going to force people to really grow up, like almost overnight. Especially if this continues, where just everything's failing by the time 20 years from now. I don't even know what that's going to look like. So the takeaway is that you should be scared for the future, but also you should not be scared for the future. If you plan correctly, you know, mend relationships where you can, you know, go to church again if you can, just figure out something. You know, if you're not religious, then just figure out something, some kind of community building. Like, there's another channel that I follow called the Old Glory Club that I discovered through Pete Quinones, who I've been watching for a while. But these kinds of ideas are going to be pivotal. Another really good channel is The Backlash. If you guys know who Rebecca, blonde in the Belly of the Beast, is, this is like her new venture. And she actually lives pretty close to me. She lives just north in Idaho. So these are the things I'm looking out for, is like, who's intentionally building communities, who's talking about this. in a way that is meaningful. And those are also going to be the opportunities. If you're a young, like I would say, if you're a very young person right now, like early 20s, I think it's a cliche, but I think learning a trade in something like plumbing or electric work, or go work in construction, like this is something that I would do if I was young again. Like I really regret that I never learned certain skills for, construction and infrastructure, because it might get to a point where you can literally just build your own house somewhere. I don't know. Again, we might enter, there's two possibilities where we'll enter like a neo dark ages where the government is so inept and just corrupt, which I can see that. Like basically the government becomes so corrupt that the aristocracy has to like flee into the hills, and a lot of them will die off because they don't have the skills to survive. And then we'll enter this like reawakened rural period of America where we'll still have like the internet and the technology and the electric grid, but we'll be living like much simpler lives, like in the 1800s or something like that. But there's also another future, which is the Blade Runner future, which is what I think that Davos and Peter Thiel and a lot of these, it's in Trump's admin too. I think this is ultimately what Elon wants, is they want this sort of, it's not necessarily you will own nothing and be happy, but it very much will be like, if you've heard the term coomer, like coom pod, you'll just like live in these, you'll just live in like a dwelling of some kind, and the government will pump feed money to you, and you'll just you'll have like a payment credit score where like you won't get to eat unless you think a certain way, right? Like the typical Brave New World George Orwell type of thinking. But I'm starting to think it's more the former. I'm thinking that it's going to be just a complete total collapse, because these people really are inept. They don't seem to know what they're doing. Right? Again, that's another thing, is this entire immigration issue is going to come to a head. You can't just multiculturally diversify and melting pot every country in the world and expect that to work out for the long term. Europe is completely overrun with Muslims and Indians now. America as well. America has a serious Indian problem. That's something that there's a book called Camp of the Saints. It's a fiction book, but it's really hard to get. So if you think Pete Quinona is actually, I'll shout him out. He has he did the reading. So if you go look him up and go into his archive, you can find the reading. But that's kind of a bleak but very plausible future of what will happen with immigration in America if this continues, right? And again, Trump to me still has shown that he's not completely serious about this. The deportation numbers are way too low. You would have to really ramp it up just to restore the country before 2020, when Biden got in and flooded the country. So you have a lot of work to do just there. So that's going to come to a head. We're going to see a lot of the diversity start to really show its ugly head. The woman thing is going to become a problem, especially in my generation, as the women get really old. And they'll be either one of two things. A lot of them will be single mothers with bastard children, and then there'll just be a lot of childless women. I think there's a study saying like 50% of women from the millennial generation will be single and childless by the year 2030, which is only 5 years away, guys. Crazy to think about. They were talking about this in like 2020. Well, guess what? We're already in 2025, so that's how fast time flies. That's how fast these things will happen. So I don't know. You really should be thinking about this, doing what you can. I'm kind of in a weird paralysis stage right now because I haven't been able to find employment. I've just been trying to mentally cope with that, like the fact that I might never have like like a steady paycheck ever again as far as corporate America goes. And so I'm just getting to the point where it's like I gotta really cut down and just save every dime. There's a lot of YouTube things I would like to do that would cost certain amounts of money, but other than that, you know, I have everything I need. Like, video games are cheap. It's a fairly cheap hobby, especially if you just play like older games and things like that. So my cost of living to like my entertainment and to kind of stay sane, books are one that they're pretty expensive, but that's why you can listen to podcasts and things like that to get that. So it just, the things in my life are pretty simple to maintain. And nobody, you know, Mike Tyson, nobody really knows what's going to happen until you get punched in the face. So you prepare, but you don't really know completely. But yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of rambling at this point. We're 30 minutes in. Again, thank you for watching. Really appreciate it. If you guys enjoy this content, please subscribe, please like. But yeah, that's kind of the takeaway. Just get ready. Get ready for some interesting times, right? May you live in interesting times is a good way to think about it. But I don't really fully know what's going to happen, but it's becoming a little more apparent that we are about to enter a complete collapse, and we're going to enter some hard times. We're going to have to rely on each other a lot more, and so just really be thinking about that. If you live in a city especially, you just got to move, man. A lot of people need to really think about that too. That's more of a woman thing, I'm finding, but yeah, like the last girl I dated was over 2 years ago, and she had this big thing about wanting to live in New York and being like a fashion designer. It was one of the reasons why we didn't work out, because it's like, if you're still thinking that way, like I literally wanted to go live on a farm. She had inherited some land from her dad, and she just didn't even care about that. I was thinking like, that's what I would do. Let's go live on the land. Let's go do something like that. But it is a woman thing. You can still get to the women, though. It's not completely hopeless, but a lot of the women have been brainwashed, and they're still... They're just not in reality. I don't know. They're not in reality. A lot of them. And I'll probably start covering articles about this. You can just go read about this. You go read about the articles they write. You know, you're getting a lot of a lot of them are getting the ick again, right? Because the right-wing crowd is becoming more prevalent in the world, and the women are getting the ick now because, you know, it's misogynistic to face reality, guys. That's basically the takeaway. So anyway, that is the video. Again, thank you so much for watching. Appreciate you guys listening to me ramble. Hopefully you guys have been enjoying the videos. If you guys, probably not going to be getting a ton of views for a while. Like I said, I have I'm trying to do a proof of concept here, where if I make videos regularly, 5 days a week, I'm going to do 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. If I do this regularly, then the channel will start gaining some traction again. And I'm going to try to bring you guys some meaningful things, because I have learned quite a bit in the last 5 years, and so I'm going to be doing that. Probably still make some like movie reviews, video game review stuff. You'll see some of that occasionally as well. But yeah, I just appreciate you guys so much for watching, and like I said, like and subscribe, and that's all I can ask. And comment too. Comment. I really want to see some comments. That's something my channel doesn't get a whole lot of, but that would be great, because it would also give me ideas for content in the future. I could like reply to comments, whatever. And I don't really care. You guys can say whatever you want. If you agree with me, disagree with me, you know, you can make fun of me. I just don't care. Just looking for a little bit of engagement here. So anyway, guys, that is it, and I'll talk to you later.